The scream of a Damascus alley ripped through my mind, a boy's voice pleading in Farsi as blood pooled beneath my boots. I was not supposed to be there, not supposed to hear his final breath. But I did. And it never left me. Now, 15 years later, I gripped a mop handle in a sterile hallway at Fairchild Military Base, my reflection a ghost in the polished concrete, hiding the truth that could unravel everything. The East Wing smelled of bleach and stale coffee, its air heavy with the hum of encrypted servers behind locked doors. My sneakers, worn to threads, glided silently as I pushed the mop bucket, its wheels squeaking like a faint cry no one heeded. Uniformed men strode past, their boots clicking in rhythm, their voices sharp with purpose. I was invisible to them, a shadow in faded coveralls, my plastic ID badge reading Sarah Mitchell Maintenance. They did not see me. They never did. Lieutenant James Carter, barely 25, leaned against the intelligence briefing room door, his smirk cutting through the morning haze. "Hey, mop lady," he called, his voice dripping with mockery. "Missed a spot by the vending machine, or do you not speak English?" His buddies chuckled, their eyes sliding over me like I was furniture. I did not flinch. I twisted the mop, the acrid sting of cleaning fluid burning my nostrils, and kept my gaze on the floor. My heart pounded, not from his words, but from the memory they stirred. A colonel in Kandahar, laughing as I translated a defector's confession under flickering lights. I had been someone then. Now, I was nothing. I moved down the hall, the bucket squeak my only companion. The men's laughter faded, replaced by the low buzz of a briefing room. I paused, not because I needed to, but because I heard it. Rapid-fire Arabic, clipped and precise, slipping through a cracked door. "Harakat al-Ahilya," a captain muttered, his pronunciation sloppy, turning civilian movement into a crude phrase. My hand tightened on the mop. I could correct him in 9 languages, could unravel his entire briefing with a single sentence, but I did not. Not yet. The hallway emptied as the morning shift began. I pushed the bucket to a storage closet, its metal door cold against my palm. Alone, I exhaled, the weight of silence pressing against my chest. I was not here by accident. 15 years ago, I wore a different uniform, one with no name, only a pin that opened doors no one else could. I spoke to warlords in Beirut, interrogated spies in Tripoli, briefed generals who never knew my clearance level. Then, Morocco happened. A classified incident, a sealed file, a life erased. I chose this, mopping floors fading into the background because it was safer, because I was done, but the base was not safe. I felt it in the air, a current of wrongness, like a wire humming before it sparks. I locked the closet and walked to my truck, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the tarmac. My apartment was 10 minutes off base, a cramped unit behind a mechanic's shop, its walls bare except for a bookshelf. Russian novels, Arabic poetry, Mandarin dictionaries, each spine a piece of who I had been. I knelt beside my bed, the floorboards creaking, and pulled out a wooden box. Its military crest was faded, the wood worn smooth by years of secrecy. I unlocked it with a key I kept on a chain around my neck. Inside, a single photograph. Me, younger, in tactical gear, standing beside a man whose face was blurred by time. A document, its ink faint, bore 3 stamps, 2 American, 1 NATO. I traced the words, Sarah Mitchell, linguistic operative, Shadow Division. My hands trembled. I had buried this life, but it was clawing its way back. I slid the photo back, locked the box, and stood. The base was vulnerable, and I was the only one who could hear the threat. That night, I returned to the East Wing, my coveralls blending into the dim light. The briefing room was empty, but the digital map still glowed, coordinates pulsing in Syria. I slipped inside, my pulse steady, and scanned the projection. The captain's voice echoed in my mind, his Arabic mangled but deliberate. It was not a mistake. It was a signal, a coded phrase buried in routine chatter, meant for someone listening, someone who was not me. I froze as footsteps echoed down the hall. Heavy, deliberate, not the casual stride of a soldier. I stepped back, my hand brushing the mop bucket, and slipped into the shadows. The door creaked open, and a silhouette filled the frame. Tall, older, his uniform pristine, his eyes scanning the room like a predator. I knew him. Viktor Romanov, a Russian liaison, a ghost from my past. His gaze swept over the map, then paused, on me. A flicker of recognition, gone in an instant. He turned and left, his boots fading into the night. My breath caught, sharp and cold. Romanov was not here for diplomacy. He was hunting. And I was no longer invisible. Viktor Romanov's shadow lingered in my mind like smoke, curling through memories I had buried under years of silence. His eyes, sharp and calculating, had grazed mine for a fraction too long, stirring a dread I thought I had outrun. I stood in the East Wing's briefing room, the digital map's glow casting Syria's borders in cold blue light, its coordinates pulsing like a warning. My hands, still calloused from a decade of gripping mops, itched for the weight of a comms unit, for the clarity of a mission. But I was not that woman anymore. Or so I told myself. The base hummed with morning routine, its tarmac alive with the roar of jets and the crisp snap of flags in the wind. I pushed my mop bucket through Wing C, the classified logistics hub, where officers in starched uniforms moved with purpose. Their voices overlapped, briefing schedules, drone protocols, NATO delegation arrivals, but I heard the undercurrent, the tension of a base preparing for scrutiny. Today, Romanov and his delegation would walk these halls, shaking hands while probing for weaknesses. I knew his kind. I had faced him before, across a dusty table in Damascus, his smile a blade disguised as courtesy. I blended into the background, my coveralls a shield of anonymity. The bucket's wheels squeaked, a rhythm I matched with my steps to avoid notice. Lieutenant James Carter strode past, his boots polished to a mirror sheen, his smirk fixed as he muttered to a peer, "Ghost Mop's at it again." I did not look up. His words were noise, irrelevant compared to the Arabic phrase I had overheard last night. Coded, deliberate, a signal buried in routine chatter. It was not meant for me, but I had caught it, and now Romanov's presence made it impossible to ignore. The conference room loomed ahead, its mahogany table polished, its walls lined with frosted glass. I was assigned to clean it today, a coincidence I did not trust. I slipped inside, the air cool and heavy with the scent of leather and electronics. Laptops blinked in idle mode, their screens locked with digital seals. I moved silently, wiping down chairs, my eyes scanning every detail. The placement of folders, the angle of a coffee cup, the faint hum of a projector. My training never left me. I saw patterns where others saw chaos. The door swung open and General Thomas Hawthorne entered, his presence filling the room like a storm. His gray hair was cropped close, his eyes sharp beneath heavy brows. He carried a briefing folder, its edges worn from use. He did not see me, not really. To him, I was a fixture, like the flag in the corner. I kept my head down, my mop gliding across the floor, but my pulse quickened. Hawthorne was the base's backbone. A man who trusted systems over people. If Romanov was hunting, Hawthorne would be his target. The NATO delegation arrived at 10, their arrival ceremonial, marked by salutes and the clatter of glossy boots. I stood against the wall, clipboard in hand, my yellow armband marking me as contracted personnel. Invisible. The delegates filed in, British, French, German, their uniforms a mosaic of insignias. Then Romanov entered, older but unmistakable, his hair silvered, his posture erect. His eyes swept the room, pausing on me for a heartbeat too long. A twitch at the corner of his mouth, not quite a smile, sent a chill down my spine. He remembered me. Not my name, perhaps, but my face, from a life I had burned to ash. I forced my hands to stay steady, my expression blank. The room buzzed with restrained diplomacy, voices layered with practiced cordiality. Hawthorne stood at the head, flipping through his folder, his voice steady as he outlined joint drone protocols. Romanoff sat across, his fingers steepled, his gaze drifting, not to the projector, but to me. Every few minutes his eyes flicked my way, subtle, calculated, testing. I felt the weight of Damascus again, his voice then, low and mocking, as he questioned my cover in a room thick with cigarette smoke. He had not believed me then. He did not believe me now. I moved to the corner, adjusting a mop cart that did not need adjusting. My clipboard was a prop, its pages blank, but my mind cataloged everything. Romanoff's slight lean toward his aide, the way his pen tapped twice before pausing, the rhythm of his breathing. He was reading the room, mapping its soft spots, and I was one of them. The briefing shifted to swarm dispersal in urban zones, Hawthorne's voice cutting through the hum of translation devices. "Colonel Romanoff, your team's data is critical. We need to compare." Romanoff nodded, his smile thin, but his attention wavered. He leaned back, his chair creaking, and his gaze locked on me. A memory clicked in his posture, a tightening of his jaw. He stood, his movement sudden, deliberate. "Excuse me," he said, his English heavy with a Russian accent. "There is a mistake in your perimeter." The room stilled, heads turning. Hawthorne frowned. "What do you mean?" Romanoff pointed, not at me, but just past, his finger grazing the air near my shoulder. "Your cleaning staff, that one." Time hung like a held breath. I froze, my hand on the mop cart, my heart a drum against my ribs. All eyes turned to me, a spotlight I had spent years avoiding. I straightened, meeting Romanoff's stare. "Yes," I said, my voice flat, American, unyielding. He stepped closer, his boots echoing on the polished floor. "You have cleaned this room for how long?" 10 months, I replied, my tone steady, though my pulse raced. "Twice daily?" he pressed, his eyes narrowing. I nodded. "What is your name?" "Sarah," I said. "No last name, no rank?" "Just Sarah." A flicker in his gaze, the kind only operatives recognize, a shadow moving across a locked vault. He leaned closer, his voice low, meant for me alone. "Do you remember Istanbul?" The room vanished. Istanbul, 2010. A riverbank, a boy named Nikita, his eyes wide with betrayal as Romanoff walked away. I had been there, a scarf hiding my face, my voice fluent in Farsi, my orders clear. Romanoff had left Nikita to die. I had not saved him. The memory clawed at me, sharp and raw, but I did not blink. I stepped forward, closing the space between us, my voice barely a whisper. "I remember the river, and the boy you left behind. His name was Nikita." Silence cracked through the room like a gunshot. Romanoff stepped back, his face paling, his arrogance fracturing. The delegates shifted, confused, their murmurs rising. Hawthorne's eyes sharpened, his hand pausing on his folder. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded, stepping forward. I turned to him, my gaze steady, though my hands trembled beneath the clipboard. "Sir, permission to speak privately about a security concern." Hawthorne studied me, really saw me for the first time. Something in my voice, my posture, told him I was not what I seemed. He hesitated, then nodded. "Everyone out," he said, his tone brooking no argument. The room emptied in seconds, chairs scraping, boots retreating. Romanov lingered, his eyes locked on mine, a predator sizing up prey. Then he left, the door clicking shut behind him. Silence pressed against me, heavy and electric. Hawthorne crossed his arms, his stare piercing. "Who are you?" I walked to the wall, my movements precise, and opened a hidden panel with a practiced twist. A black pouch lay inside, untouched for months. I handed it to him. He opened it, his breath catching as he read the manila envelope's stamps. 2 American, 1 NATO, clearance Alpha 6. "Sarah Mitchell," he muttered, scanning the file. "Linguistic operative, Shadow Division, Beirut, Kandahar, Tripoli." He looked up, stunned. "You are her." I nodded, my voice low. "I was never meant to stay above water, sir, but Romanov is not here for cooperation. He is probing, mapping our defenses, and I am the only one who can read what he is really saying." Hawthorne sank into a chair, the folder trembling in his hands. "Why here? Why now?" I met his gaze, my resolve hardening. "Because he knows me, and he knows I can stop him." Viktor Romanov's words, "Do you remember Istanbul?" echoed in my skull, a taunt that tore open scars I had spent years stitching shut. I stood in the conference room, the air thick with the scent of polished wood and cooling coffee, my hands steady on the hidden pouch I had just handed General Thomas Hawthorne. His eyes, wide with disbelief, flicked between the manila envelope and me, as if seeing me for the first time. The room was silent, but my pulse roared like a jet engine, drowning out the world. I was exposed, my cover shattered, and Romanov knew it. Hawthorne's fingers traced the faded stamps on the envelope. 2 American, 1 NATO, clearance Alpha 6. He opened it, his breath catching as he scanned the declassified summary. "Sarah Mitchell," he read, his voice low, almost reverent. "Linguistic operative, Shadow Division, deployed Beirut, Kandahar, Tripoli, disappeared after Morocco." He looked up, his gaze sharp, searching. "You are her, the ghost they whispered about in briefings. Why hide? Why mop floors?" I met his eyes, my voice steady though my chest ached. "Because I had to vanish, sir. Morocco was not just an incident. It was a betrayal. I lost everything. My team, my name, my purpose. This life, this base, was my way to stay close without being seen. But Romanov's presence changes everything." I paused, the weight of my next words heavy. "He is not here for diplomacy. He is testing us, probing for cracks. And I am the only one who can read his moves." Hawthorne leaned back, the chair creaking under his weight. His face was a map of conflict, duty warring with disbelief. "You expect me to trust a janitor with no paper trail, no clearance based on this?" He tapped the envelope, his voice hard but laced with curiosity. I nodded, unflinching. "You do not have to trust me, sir. Trust the evidence." Romanov recognized me. That was not a question about Istanbul. It was a warning. The general exhaled, his fingers drumming on the table. "What do you need?" I stepped closer, my voice low, urgent. "Access to the comms terminal. I need to scan the base's digital traffic, cross-reference it with what I heard last night. A coded Arabic phrase, mispronounced deliberately. It is a signal, sir, and Romanov is part of it." Hawthorne studied me, then nodded once, sharp and decisive. "You have 1 hour. Prove it." I moved to the terminal, its screen glowing in the dim room, my fingers flying across the keys with a muscle memory I had not used in years. The interface was familiar, its encrypted pathways like old roads I had walked in darkness. I pulled up the base's inbound and outbound logs, filtering for anomalies, packets that did not belong, transmissions with irregular signatures. My eyes scanned the data, my mind translating patterns into intent. There, A shimmer in the network, a subtle spike in encrypted traffic from the eastern perimeter, near the weather array. It was not routine. It was deliberate. The door creaked open and I froze, my hand hovering over the keyboard. Lieutenant James Carter stepped in, his smirk gone, replaced by confusion. "Sir, the delegation is asking for you," he said to Hawthorne, then glanced at me, his brow furrowing. "What is she doing here?" Hawthorne's voice was steel. "She is working, Lieutenant. Leave us." Carter hesitated, his eyes lingering on me, sensing the shift in the air. He backed out, the door clicking shut. I turned back to the screen, my heart racing. The spike was growing, a digital pulse that matched the Arabic phrase I had overheard. It was a beacon, guiding something, or someone, toward the base's soft spots. I cross-referenced it with satellite feeds, my fingers trembling as I isolated a heat signature near the restricted hangars. A drone, cloaked, Russian-engineered, moving too smoothly to be one of ours. Romanov's team had been laying traps, and this was their first move. I faced Hawthorne, my voice urgent. "Sir, there is a rogue drone on the eastern edge mapping our defenses. It is transmitting now. We have minutes before it cloaks and vanishes." His eyes narrowed, but he did not hesitate. "What do you need?" "Access to Base C, the old RQ-9 Reapers." "I can neutralize it, but I need to move now." He nodded, already reaching for his comms. "Go. I will clear the path." I left the conference room, my coveralls feeling like a lie against my skin. The hallways were a blur, my sneakers silent on the polished concrete as I moved toward the restricted vaults. Soldiers passed, their glances sharp but fleeting. I was still the janitor to them, but the weight of Hawthorne's clearance unlocked doors that had been sealed to me for years. The vault's biometric scanner blinked red, then green, as Hawthorne's override kicked in. I stepped inside, the air cool and heavy with the scent of oil and circuitry. Bay C was a graveyard of decommissioned drones, their hulls collecting dust under dim blue lights. I moved to the second RQ-9, its AI core untouched by modern upgrades. My hands worked fast, bypassing the console, entering a passcode I had written a decade ago. The system hummed to life, its screen flickering with grainy optics. I calibrated the sensors, my eyes locked on the rogue drone's signature, a faint shimmer behind a defunct transport shell, its lens fixed on the base's RD wing. 17 seconds. That was all I had before it jumped to cloaked altitude. Alone in my apartment that night, I sat on the edge of my bed, the wooden box open beside me. The photograph stared back, my younger self in tactical gear, the man beside me a blur of ink and time. Damascus, 2010. The mission that broke me. I had been sent to extract a defector, a boy named Nikita, his eyes wide with trust as I promised safety. Romanov was there, his smile cold, his orders clearer than mine. He left Nikita to die in that alley, his blood pooling under my boots as I ran. I failed him. I failed myself. The memory clawed at me, raw and unrelenting, but it also sharpened my resolve. Romanov would not win again. I closed the box, the lock clicking like a vow. The base was vulnerable, and I was its last line of defense. I stood, my reflection in the cracked mirror a stranger's, part janitor, part operative, all fire. Romanov thought he could outmaneuver me, but he did not know the woman I had become. I would face him not as a ghost, but as a reckoning. Back in the vault, the RQ-9 screen locked onto the rogue drone's trajectory. My fingers hovered over the controls, the passcode burning in my mind. I input the coordinates, loaded the override sequence, and prepared to fire. The drone was ascending, its cloaking mechanism seconds from activation. My heart pounded, the weight of Damascus heavy on my shoulders. I could not fail again. The screen flickered, the rogue drone jerking upward. I held my breath, my finger on the trigger. Then, a new signal spiked on the feed, a second transmission, deeper in the base's network, hidden until now. My blood ran cold. The drone was not the only threat. Romanov had planned for this, and I had walked right into his trap. The second signal pulsed on the RQ-9's screen, a digital heartbeat buried deep in Fairchild's network, mocking me with its cunning. I stood in Bay C's vault, the air thick with the hum of old machinery and the tang of rusted metal, my finger frozen above the trigger. The rogue drone was seconds from cloaking, its lens glinting in the satellite feed. But this new transmission, sharp, encrypted, originating from within the base, meant Romanov had outplayed me. My heart slammed against my ribs, the memory of Damascus clawing at me, Nikita's blood, Romanov's cold smile, my failure. I could not let it happen again. I forced my eyes to the screen, my mind racing to untangle the threads. The rogue drone was a decoy, a flashy distraction to draw our focus, while the real threat burrowed deeper. I input a secondary scan, my fingers trembling but precise, cross-referencing the signal's signature with known Russian protocols. It was subtle, masked as routine maintenance chatter, but its cadence was unmistakable. Archaic verbs, Soviet-era syntax, the kind Romanov's operatives used in Damascus. My breath caught. They were targeting the base's drone command servers, probing for a zero-day exploit to cripple our defenses. I turned to the comms unit, my voice low and urgent. General Hawthorne, this is Mitchell. The drone is a feint. There is a second breach, internal, targeting the command servers. I need a lockdown on all outbound transmissions now. His reply crackled through, sharp with tension. You are sure? Yes, sir. Romanov's team has been seeding traps for days. We have minutes. A pause, then his voice hardened. Lockdown initiated. What else? Keep the delegation contained. Romanov cannot know we have seen this. I refocused on the RQ-9, its optics locked on the rogue drone. 17 seconds had dwindled to 5. I input the override sequence, my hands steady despite the storm in my chest, and fired. The Reaper launched a silent EM pulse, invisible but lethal, rupturing the drone's processor core. The screen flickered as the target stalled, then plummeted, shattering half a mile outside the fence. Dust rose in the feed, a fleeting scar on the earth. One threat down, but the real danger was still alive, pulsing in the base's veins. I left the vault, my sneakers silent on the concrete as I moved toward the command room. The hallways were locked down, soldiers frozen at their posts, their eyes darting with confusion. I was still the janitor to them, my coveralls a lie that chafed against my skin. But Hawthorne's clearance parted the sea, biometric scanners blinking green as I passed. The command room was a fortress of screens and steel, its air heavy with the buzz of live feeds. Hawthorne stood at the center, his arms crossed, his face a mask of controlled fury. Colonel Daniel Ellison, stern and graying, flanked him, his eyes narrowing as I entered. "Report!" Hawthorne snapped, his voice cutting through the hum. I stepped to the main terminal, my fingers already moving. The drone was a diversion, sir. The real breach is here. I pulled up the second signal, its waveform glowing red on the screen. It is a targeted attack on the drone command servers, using a zero-day exploit. If it succeeds, they will have full control of our aerial defenses. Ellison leaned closer, his voice low. How did you find this? I met his gaze, unflinching. Because I have heard their codes before. In Damascus. Romanov's team uses outdated syntax to hide in plain sight. Hawthorne's jaw tightened. Can you stop it? I nodded, my hands flying across the keys. I can isolate it, but I need to trace the source. It is coming from inside the base, likely a compromised device. I filtered the network, my eyes scanning for anomalies. A laptop, a tablet, anything out of place. The signal was clever, bouncing through proxy relays, but I knew Romanov's patterns. I had studied him for years, memorized his inflections, his habits. There, a maintenance terminal in Wing D, dormant for months, now active. My blood ran cold. It was in the logistics hub, steps from the conference room where Romanov sat. I faced Hawthorne, my voice steady. The source is in Wing D, a maintenance terminal. We need to secure it quietly before Romanov's team knows we are onto them. He nodded, already signaling Ellison. Take a tactical squad, silent approach. Mitchell, you are with them. I hesitated, the weight of my past pressing against me. I was no soldier, not anymore. But I was the only one who could read the signal's intent. I nodded, my resolve hardening. Yes, sir. The corridors to Wing D were a maze of locked doors and flickering lights, the lockdown casting an eerie stillness. I moved with the squad, 4 soldiers in tactical gear, their rifles low but ready. Their leader, Sergeant Ruiz, glanced at me, his eyes questioning but professional. You are the janitor, right? He whispered. I gave a tight smile. Not today. He nodded, sensing the shift, and we pressed on. Wing D was silent, its air heavy with the scent of dust and electronics. The maintenance terminal sat in a corner, its screen dark but active, a faint green light blinking like a predator's eye. I knelt beside it, my hands steady as I bypassed the lockout. The signal was live, transmitting fragments of code to an external relay. I traced it, my mind translating the data, coordinates, encryption keys, a map of the base's defenses. Romanov's team was not just probing, they were preparing to strike. I isolated the signal, my fingers moving with practiced speed, and uploaded a countermeasure, a false packet to disrupt the relay. The screen flickered, the green light stalling. Got it, I whispered, but my relief was short-lived. Footsteps echoed down the hall, slow and deliberate. The squad tensed, rifles rising. I stood, my heart pounding, and signaled for silence. The footsteps stopped, replaced by a low hum, mechanical, unnatural. A second drone? No, something smaller, closer. Ruiz motioned for cover, and we ducked behind a row of servers. The hum grew louder, then stopped. Silence pressed against us, heavy and suffocating. I peered around the corner, my eyes locking on a small device. A mobile transmitter. Russian-made, its lens glowing red. It was not just transmitting. It was watching. Romanov had anticipated this, planted a failsafe to monitor any response. My stomach twisted. He was always one step ahead. I signaled to Ruiz, pointing to the device. He nodded, moving silently to disable it, but the lens swiveled, locking onto him. A sharp beep cut through the silence, and the device's light flashed, transmitting a burst before Ruiz smashed it with his rifle. "Damn it!" he hissed, his voice low. I checked the terminal, my worst fears confirmed. The burst had sent a partial map of our response, enough for Romanov to know we were closing in. I faced the squad, my voice urgent. "We need to move. Romanov knows we are here." "The real attack is coming, and it is bigger than we thought." Ruiz nodded, his face grim. "Back to command?" I shook my head, my eyes burning with resolve. "No." "To the conference room. Romanov is still there, and I need to face him." Viktor Romanov's shadow loomed larger with every step I took toward the conference room, his cunning a blade pressed against my resolve. The corridors of Fairchild's Wing D were a labyrinth of steel and silence, the lockdown's weight suffocating as I moved with Sergeant Ruiz and his squad. My coveralls clung to my skin, a relic of the janitor I no longer was, but my mind was sharp, honed by years of decoding lies in rooms just like this. The mobile transmitter's final burst had betrayed our position, and Romanov knew we were closing in. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with the clarity of purpose I had buried after Damascus. This time I would not fail. We reached the conference room's outer doors, their frosted glass reflecting the dim glow of emergency lights. Ruiz signaled for silence, his squad fanning out, rifles low but ready. I pressed my ear to the door, the faint hum of voices seeping through, diplomatic murmurs, calculated and hollow. Romanov was inside, his presence a poison I could feel through the walls. I glanced at Ruiz, my voice a whisper. "He cannot leave this room until we know his endgame. I need to get inside, alone." Ruiz's eyes narrowed, but he nodded, trusting the fire in my gaze. "We will secure the perimeter." "Go." I slipped through the door, my sneakers silent on the polished floor. The room was a theater of false cordiality, delegates seated around the mahogany table, their faces masks of restraint. Laptops blinked, coffee cups sat untouched, and the air carried the faint buzz of translation devices. General Thomas Hawthorne stood at the head, his briefing folder open, his voice steady but tense as he discussed joint protocols. Romanov sat across, his silver hair catching the light, his smile a thin veneer over something predatory. His eyes flicked to me as I entered, a flicker of amusement crossing his face. He knew I was here to end this. I blended into the periphery, my clipboard a prop, my yellow armband marking me as insignificant. But Romanov's gaze lingered, his fingers pausing on his pen, a subtle tell I had memorized in Damascus. He was calculating, weighing how much I had uncovered. I moved to the corner, adjusting a mop cart that did not need adjusting, my eyes scanning the room for his aide. A young man, sharp-featured, his laptop open, his fingers too still. The aide was the key, the one relaying the compromised signals. I needed to isolate him. Hawthorne's voice cut through the room, addressing Romanov directly. "Colonel, your team's data on swarm dispersal is incomplete. We need specifics." Romanov leaned back, his smile widening, his voice smooth with practiced deflection. "General, these are sensitive matters. Perhaps a private discussion?" His eyes flicked to me again, a challenge buried in his tone. My pulse quickened. He was stalling, buying time for his aide to finalize the breach. I stepped forward, my voice low but clear, cutting through the diplomatic haze. "General, a word, please." The room stilled, heads turning. Hawthorne's brow furrowed, but he nodded, stepping toward me. Romanov's smile faltered, his fingers tightening on his pen. I leaned close to Hawthorne, my voice a whisper. The aide, second from Romanov's left, he is transmitting from his laptop. "We need to detain him now." Hawthorne's eyes sharpened, but he hesitated, the weight of diplomacy pressing against him. "You are certain?" I nodded, my gaze unwavering. "Yes, sir." "It is him or the base." Hawthorne signaled to the MPs at the door, his voice low. "Take the aide, quietly." The MPs moved, their steps deliberate, but Romanov was faster. He stood, his voice sharp with feigned outrage. "General, this is unacceptable. My team is under diplomatic protection." The aide froze, his fingers hovering over his laptop, his eyes darting to Romanov for guidance. I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Colonel, your aide's laptop is transmitting to an external relay. Shall we check it?" The room fell silent, the delegates shifting uneasily. Romanov's eyes locked on mine, a storm brewing behind his calm facade. "You are bold, Sarah," he said, his voice low, meant for me alone. "But you are out of your depth." I held his stare, my voice steady. "I was in Damascus, Victor." "I know your games, and I am not playing." His jaw tightened, a crack in his armor. The MPs seized the aide, pulling him from his chair, his laptop confiscated. Romanov sat, his silence a concession, but his eyes burned with promise. This was not over. In the command room, I stood over the aide's laptop, its screen glowing with encrypted data. Colonel Daniel Ellison watched, his face grim as I bypassed the lockout, my fingers moving with the precision of a surgeon. The data was damning, Coordinates, encryption keys, a full map of Fairchild's drone command servers ready to be exploited. I traced the relay to a civilian telecom shed 80 kilometers away, a front for Romanov's operatives. My voice was steady as I briefed Hawthorne and Ellison. They planned to cripple our defenses, sir. The drone was a test. This was the strike. Hawthorne's face was stone, but his voice carried gratitude. You stopped it, Mitchell. Name your terms. I hesitated, the weight of my past pressing against me. I had hidden for so long, mopping floors to escape the ghosts of Damascus. But hiding had not saved Nikita, and it would not save this base. Reinstate me, sir, I said, my voice firm. Full clearance, linguistic intelligence. I am done hiding. Hawthorne nodded, his eyes holding respect. Done. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell, effective immediately. The base shifted after that, whispers spreading through the mess hall, soldiers glancing at me with a mix of awe and disbelief. Lieutenant James Carter approached me in the corridor, his smirk gone, his voice halting. I was wrong about you, ma'am. I am sorry. I studied him, seeing the insecurity beneath his bravado, and nodded. Learn from it, Lieutenant. See people, not uniforms. He stepped back, chastened, and I walked on, my new clearance badge heavy in my pocket. That night in the command room I sat alone, the screens dark, the air heavy with the scent of circuitry. My flight suit, issued hours ago, felt foreign, its fabric crisp against my skin. I traced the faded watch on my wrist, its cracked screen a relic of missions past. I had reclaimed my name, my purpose, but the cost was steep. Romanov was still out there, his plans thwarted but not broken. And I had exposed myself, stepped back into a world I had sworn to leave. A new signal flickered on the terminal, faint but deliberate, its syntax archaic, Russian. My blood ran cold. It was not from the telecom shed, not from Romanov's aide. It was fresh, sent from within 50 kilometers, and it carried a single phrase: "The river remembers." My hands trembled, the memory of Nikita's blood pooling under my boots, flooding back. Romanov was not done. He was watching, waiting, and this was his next move. The words, "The river remembers," burned into my mind. A taunt from Viktor Romanov that carried the weight of Nikita's blood and my own buried guilt. I sat in the command room, the terminal's faint glow casting shadows across my flight suit, its crisp fabric a reminder of the life I had reclaimed and the cost I now bore. The air was heavy with the hum of servers, their metallic tang sharp in my throat. My hands, steady despite the tremor in my chest, hovered over the keyboard. Romanov's new signal was no accident. It was a challenge, a promise that his game was far from over. I traced the signal, my fingers moving with the precision of a decade spent decoding secrets. The transmission was clever, masked as civilian chatter, but its archaic Russian syntax, phrases no modern operative would use, betrayed its origin. It came from a relay within 50 kilometers, too close for comfort, too deliberate to ignore. I cross-referenced it with the base's intercepted logs, my eyes scanning for patterns. There, a fragment in Arabic, laced with the same Soviet-era verb forms I had heard in Damascus. My breath caught. It was not just a message. It was a code, ordering a second breach, this time targeting the base's satellite uplink. I leaned back, the chair creaking under me, and pressed my fingers to my temples. Romanov was relentless, his mind a labyrinth of traps within traps. The first breach, his drone, his aide's laptop, had been a test, a way to measure our response. This was the real strike, designed to blind Fairchild's eyes in the sky, leaving us vulnerable to an attack we would not see coming. My gaze fell to the faded watch on my wrist, its cracked screen a silent witness to my failures. I could not let him win again. I activated the comms, my voice low but urgent. General Hawthorne, this is Mitchell. I have a new signal Russian, targeting the satellite uplink. It is live, and we have hours, not days, to stop it. His reply crackled through, sharp with exhaustion, but steady. Coordinates? 50 kilometers northeast, likely a mobile relay. I am tracing it now, but we need ground interdiction, silent, before it transmits. A pause, then his voice hardened. You are leading this, Mitchell. Pick your team. I hesitated, the weight of command settling on my shoulders. I had given orders before, in Beirut, in Kandahar, but that was another life, one I had buried under mops and silence. Now there was no hiding. I nodded to myself, my resolve stealing. Yes, sir. I will take Sergeant Ruiz's squad and Colonel Ellison for oversight. We move in 30. I ended the call and stood, the flight suit no longer foreign but a second skin. Romanov had called me out, and I would answer. The briefing room was a stark contrast to the command center, its walls lined with maps and screens, its air thick with the scent of coffee and tension. Ruiz and his squad stood ready, their tactical gear gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Colonel Daniel Ellison, his face etched with quiet respect, handed me a tablet with real-time satellite feeds. Your call, Commander, he said, his voice steady. I nodded, my eyes scanning the team. They were young, hardened, but they looked at me differently now. Not as the janitor, but as the woman who had stopped a breach no one else had seen. I projected the signal's coordinates onto the wall, a red dot pulsing northeast of the base. This is a mobile relay Russian-made, likely manned by 2 operatives, I said, my voice clear, authoritative. It is transmitting a code to hijack our satellite uplink. If it succeeds, we lose our eyes in the sky. We move in, neutralize the relay, and capture the operatives alive. Questions? Ruiz raised a hand, his eyes sharp. How do we know they will not see us coming? I met his gaze. Because I wrote their playbook. They expect drones, not ground teams. We use their blind spots. We rolled out under radio silence, the night cloaking our convoy as we sped toward the coordinates. The desert stretched around us, its sand glowing silver under a half moon, the air cool and sharp with the scent of dust. I sat in the lead vehicle, my tablet glowing with the relay's signal, my mind translating its fragments. The Arabic code was layered, a mix of modern dialects and outdated forms, a signature I had seen in Romanov's operations. It was a kill switch, designed to disable our satellites and mask an incoming strike. My hands tightened on the tablet. I would not let it happen. We stopped a kilometer out, the relay's location a faint glow in the distance, a camouflaged truck, its antenna barely visible. Ruiz signaled for a perimeter sweep, his squad moving like shadows. I stayed with Ellison, my eyes locked on the truck through night vision goggles. 2 operatives, their movements precise, worked at a console, unaware of our approach. I whispered to Ellison, We take them alive. They will know Romanov's next move. He nodded, his hand on his sidearm, ready to back me. We crept closer, the sand muffling our steps, the relay's hum growing louder. My heart pounded, the memory of Damascus sharp, Nikita's eyes, Romanov's betrayal. I signaled to Ruiz, and the squad moved in, swift and silent. The operatives froze as rifles surrounded them, their hands rising in surrender. I approached the console, my fingers disabling the relay with a practiced sequence. The signal died, its red pulse fading from my tablet. The night was ours. Back at the base, I stood over the captured operatives in a secure vault, their faces defiant but silent. I spoke in flawless Russian, my voice low, cutting. You will talk, or you will disappear. Where is Romanov's next relay? The older operative, his eyes sharp, smirked. You are the ghost, yes. He said you would come. My blood ran cold, but I leaned closer, my voice ablade. Tell him the ghost is awake, and I see everything. He paled, his defiance cracking, and whispered a location, a safe house 30 kilometers south. I reported to Hawthorne, my voice steady but heavy. The relay is down, operatives in custody. They gave up a safe house. We need to move on it before Romanov relocates. He nodded, his eyes holding a rare warmth. You did it, Mitchell. The base is secure thanks to you. I shook my head, the weight of the new signal still pressing against me. Not yet, sir. Romanov is still out there. That evening, Romanov's delegation departed, his request for transfer citing logistical inefficiencies. I watched from the command room, his silhouette in the convoy, his eyes scanning the base one last time. Our gazes met through the feed, a silent vow passing between us. He knew I had won this round, but his parting glance was a warning. He would return. The base resumed its rhythm, but I felt the shift, the whispers of soldiers who now saw me as more than a shadow. In my apartment, I sat with the wooden box open, the photograph of my younger self staring back. I traced Nikita's blurred face, my guilt a quiet ache. I had stopped Romanov's strike, but his words, "The river remembers," lingered, a promise of more to come. I closed the box, my resolve hardening. I was no longer the janitor, no longer the ghost. I was Sarah Mitchell, and I would be ready. The echo of Viktor Romanov's parting glance lingered in my mind, a silent promise that our war was not over. I stood in Fairchild's training room, its walls lined with screens and maps, the air sharp with the scent of fresh paint and resolve. My flight suit bore a new patch, a quill crossed with a headset mic, silver on black, the insignia of a linguistic intelligence unit reborn. I faced a team of young analysts, their eyes wide with curiosity and respect, a stark contrast to the mockery I had endured as a janitor. My voice, steady and clear, carried the weight of lessons hard learned. Never underestimate, never assume, always listen. But beneath my calm, Nikita's blood still stained my memories, and Romanov's words, "The river remembers," whispered of battles yet to come. I began the session, projecting an intercepted signal onto the screen, its Arabic laced with archaic forms. "This is how they hide," I said, my tone firm but patient. "Romanov's operatives use outdated syntax to slip through our filters. You will learn to hear it, to see the patterns no one else does." The analysts nodded, their tablets glowing as they took notes. Among them was Lieutenant James Carter, his smirk replaced by a quiet focus. He had changed, humbled by his mistake, and I saw in him the potential to grow. I met his gaze, offering a nod of encouragement. He returned it, a silent vow to do better. The training was my new mission, passing on the skills that had saved Fairchild from Romanov's breach. I taught them to dissect dialects, to recognize the cadence of deception in Russian, Arabic, Farsi. My hands moved with purpose, pointing to waveforms, pausing to correct a misstep in pronunciation. The room buzzed with energy, a team forging itself under my guidance. But my mind drifted to the safe house 30 kilometers south, the one the captured operatives had revealed. General Thomas Hawthorne had dispatched a team to raid it, but I knew Romanov. He would be gone, his tracks erased, his next move already in motion. Later, in my apartment, I sat alone, the wooden box open on my bed. The photograph of my younger self stared back, my eyes fierce but unscarred. Nikita's blurred face a ghost beside me. Damascus, 2010, had broken me. Not just the mission, but the betrayal that followed. I had been sent to extract Nikita, a defector with secrets that could shift wars. Romanov was there, his orders to eliminate Nikita clear, his smile cold as he walked away. I had promised Nikita safety, but my team was compromised, our comms intercepted. He died in that alley, his blood pooling under my boots as I ran, the weight of failure crushing me. Morocco came later, another betrayal, sealing my file, erasing my name. I had chosen to hide, to mop floors, to escape the ghosts. But they had found me. I traced the photograph, my fingers trembling. Hiding had not saved Nikita, nor had it saved me. Romanov's breach had forced me to stand, to reclaim my voice, my purpose. I closed the box, the lock clicking like a vow. I was done running. The base needed me, not as a shadow, but as a light, a beacon to guide those who would face threats like Romanov's. I stood, my reflection in the cracked mirror no longer a stranger's. My eyes burned with resolve, the scars of Damascus a map to my strength. The next morning I walked the base's corridors, my boots polished, my clearance badge gleaming. Soldiers stepped aside, their whispers respectful, their glances carrying awe. Colonel Daniel Ellison met me outside the command room, his face etched with pride. "You have changed this place, Sarah," he said, his voice low. "They see you now." I nodded, my throat tight. "It is not about being seen, sir. It is about being heard." He smiled, a rare warmth in his eyes, and handed me a folder. The safe house was empty, but we found this, a drive, encrypted, Russian. "It is yours to crack." In the command room, I sat at the terminal, the drive's data glowing on the screen. The encryption was Romanov's, layered and cunning, but I knew his mind. My fingers flew, unraveling the code, my mind translating fragments, coordinates, names, a network stretching beyond Fairchild. My breath caught. It was not just a breach. It was a blueprint for a larger strike, targeting NATO's eastern flank. I reported to Hawthorne, my voice steady but urgent. "This is Romanov's endgame, sir. He is planning a coordinated attack using linguistic traps to blind our allies. We need to warn them." Hawthorne nodded, his face grim but resolute. "You will lead the briefing, Mitchell. NATO needs to hear it from you." I hesitated, the weight of Damascus heavy, but I saw Nikita's eyes, trusting, pleading. I had failed him, but I would not fail again. "Yes, sir," I said, my voice firm. The briefing was set for dawn, a chance to turn my pain into purpose, to protect those who could not see the threat coming. That evening, the base gathered in the mess hall, a quiet ceremony to honor the team that had stopped the breach. Hawthorne stood at the front, his voice carrying across the room. "Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell," he said, his eyes on me. "You reminded us that heroes walk among us, unseen until they speak." The room erupted in applause, soldiers standing, their faces a mosaic of gratitude and respect. I stood, my heart full, my eyes tracing the faces of those I had trained, those I had saved. Carter was among them, his nod a silent thank you. As the crowd dispersed, I lingered, the hum of the base a steady pulse around me. The tarmac glowed under the setting sun, its steel gray and burnt orange a canvas of resilience. I walked the east wing, my boots echoing where my mop once squeaked, the memory of Romanov's taunt a fading scar. I had faced him, not as a ghost, but as a woman forged in fire, my voice a weapon that had saved lives. Nikita's death would always haunt me, but it had led me here, to a purpose greater than my pain. I paused outside the briefing room, the digital map still glowing, its coordinates a reminder of the work ahead. Romanov was out there, his network alive, but so was I. I touched the patch on my suit, the quill and mic a symbol of my truth. The river remembered, but so did I, and I would write the ending this time.